Hi all, this is Bob Reisman and I will be your moderator for today. Just a few items I would like to address first. In other words, some housekeeping at the beginning. Just need to let you know that this call is going to be recorded, or actually is being recorded as we speak, and it will be available on demand on the BCM1 website within a day or so. Please use the link at the bottom of your screen, sort of in the center, that says Q&A if you have a question that you would like to have addressed at the end of this webinar. The objective of today's webinar, folks, is for BCM1 to educate you on the best practices to future-proof your communications network. Given our new world of adapting and supporting a hybrid work environment, I think we all agree that this would be critically important. As UCAAS hosted voice and emerging platforms such as Microsoft Teams become considerations, many businesses we speak to lack business certainty and that expertise to make a confident decision. BCM1 is here to guide you through this process and help you avoid path dependence while gaining immediate benefits with existing platforms until you are in that position to make that migration. Our presenter today is Mike Nowak. He's an industry thought leader and vice president of sales for our SIP division. Mike has over 20 years of technical expertise and the last 10 years working for a SIP division and previous companies he's worked for. You may have heard of maybe IBM and bandwidth.com. That being said, let's begin this webinar by letting me turn this over to Mike.
Folks are utilizing the BCM1 portfolio to address current needs while future-proofing their organizations. And they're doing so in many cases in a cost-effective way that eliminates a lot of the risk that their organization will face. And that's what we're going to cover here in the next 30 minutes. So why don't we get started and just jump right in to the current market conditions and some of the things that you may be facing as an organization. One of the things that we all know is that we have to deal with a work from home workforce. It wasn't planned, but we all jumped into it. To be able to identify where our employees are so we can communicate with them with voice, video, chat, collaborate with them has never been more important. And what we found is many of our organizations reacted. Some of them did the best they can with the services they already had, and some of them jumped out and ran out and got some new technologies. But we see a lot of new behaviors from what we have in front of us, things we've had to react to and things that we have to plan for the future. Some of those things are, again, work from home, employees moving back and forth between their home office and their corporate offices from time to time. We also have to address usage fluctuations as our applications have changed. Interesting enough, we see voice minutes increasing rapidly, especially in the healthcare sector, where folks are doing more consultative conference calls and calls with their healthcare physicians. That scaling demand can break traditional services, and folks are scrambling to find answers. So these are some of the things that we see in the market. And one of the challenges that you may see, and we know others see, is they, in many cases, have legacy services. Services like analog lines and PRI services and SIP trunking services provided by legacy carriers really, in my opinion, were designed for applications that were from 40 years ago. Not anything like today, where you have the situation that we have, where we need communication and collaboration, and to be able to do this in a scalable way. And we find folks really have found the need to migrate off of these services like never before. And that's what we're going to talk about today, especially if you find yourself on any of these services or considering making a jump to a modern platform. We hope that some of this information here will help you fill in some of those gaps. So why don't we talk about the modern platforms and what folks are considering. So unified communications has been around for a while, and as you may well know, you can make your voice calls, conference calls, you can do things like chat, so forth, and there's some presence capabilities that you would see from a UCAAS type service. But with the events that we've had, and because of the way workforces have been scattered, collaboration, virtual collaboration's never been more important. And all of a sudden, you find the urgent need to have a modern day platform that can combine not only your voice and video services and your your complete communication environment into a single platform. You have the urgency to do so like never before. And this is combining into what we call a UCC platform, not UCAAS, but UCAAS, Unified Communications, along with collaboration into a modern platform that addresses this. And what we've seen in the market is explosive growth from some of the logos you've seen here. Microsoft Teams, which we'll talk to in a few minutes here. Zoom, of course, Slack, Google Meet, and WebEx, all platforms that are out there that you may even have started to use to address some of your collaboration needs. Making the jump into these systems and tools is not as easy as you may think, and there's a journey that must take place. We're going to get into that here in just a few minutes and point out some of the things you have to consider before you jump into some of these vehicles. But again, as we said, the growth and the adoption of these services is really unprecedented. And what you see is folks massively migrating and jumping into these collaboration tools, and who could blame them? Every day you're probably living out of your Microsoft Teams window, and you can call each other internally. You can chat internally. You can share documents internally. You can share them with the outside world through federations. And so it's a natural gravitational pull to say, let me start running my voice calls through the services. And so I would have to believe many on this phone call probably use Microsoft Teams in some capacity, especially because of the wide deployment of Office 365. So why don't we talk about the need to do this, and what does it actually look like once you arrive at a platform like Microsoft Teams, and some of the things that you'd have to consider when you go into something like this. So first and foremost, I'm going to show you a screenshot of a chat that I was part of a while back with one of our sales engineers. Some things that jump out on the module that you see is video calling. Click of a mouse, very easy to do. And video calling has never been more popular. You can call each other instantly by clicking the phone icon, and you can also screen share. All of these things are built in, and there's no cost to use them for internal or federated workflows. And so we've gotten used to them. And again, the thought is, let's move to the next level and start using Microsoft Teams for outside PSTN calling. So what you first and foremost see on this screen is a dial pad. And this is what many of us Microsoft Teams phone system users deal with. As a Microsoft 365 user, you can add the Microsoft phone system for a few dollars per user per month. And then you can start making and receiving phone calls once you've identified your direct routing SIP trunking provider. And again, you're working with an organization that specializes in this here at BCM1. The dial pad that you see here in many cases would be run over a traditional laptop, and folks would use a headset with their calling services to make and receive phone calls. This sounds simple and easy, and especially of us in IT, we like to jump into it. But when you factor in some users do not like to do dial by over their desktop, and they don't want to live off a headset, you have to factor those users in that may be doing a lot of call transfers, maybe a lot of workflow where they're conferencing PSTN users in. They very well need a phone for their environment. And we've seen a number of folks that we've consulted with that want to jump right into these types of platforms, and they scrap their phone only to find that they need to add it later. So that's one thing that you have to consider when you move to something like this. The other thing that happens is when you're used to a Cisco Call Manager environment or a Mitel, MyVoice Connect environment, and you're used to all of those advanced call queue features and call flow features, hunt groups, etc., and you jump into one of these platforms and their phone system capabilities, to assume that they're equal would be a wrong assumption. And one of the things that we always consult with our customers on is the fact that we need to look through and compare what you actually need to what actually is in the Microsoft phone system itself. And listed here are some of those things that are reported from us and in the field of some missing pieces in current day Microsoft phone system. And those include, in my opinion, the advanced call routing, the call queuing, the hunt group functionality. Some of it, yes, is there, but to the level that you would maybe used to, I don't think it's there yet. And that has to be factored in before you make a hot cut into something like this. Gartner Group comes out and tells us that 10 to 20% of your workforce cannot move over to a platform like Microsoft Teams today because of some of these limitations. And again, some of them that you see may be simple, maybe not in the overall advertisement. Myself, as a Microsoft Teams phone system user, I miss calls. And it's because of how the desktop flow is. I'm just not used to it. Maybe I don't have the settings correct. Transferring calls to me is difficult. Three-way PSTN calling is challenging. And I certainly wish I would have a Microsoft Teams phone for some of that. So those are some of the things that we see, plus the device management of these environments all have to be factored in and considered before someone jumps into a platform like this. There's countless different articles on the migration to these types of platforms. And what you'll find from articles from Forbes and Forrester and others is the fact that you really have to do some planning before you get into them. And this includes auditing your staff to find out if they'll make a smooth adoption for PSTN calling when you move to one of these platforms. And what we have done and what we have seen as we consult with our customers, we walk through checklists to make sure they're ready and identify gaps. And if they are ready, we support them. If they're not, we make recommendations on what they may need to do today to set themselves up for the future and not renew legacy services that are just not going to translate into modern workflows. Some of the things that we go over specifically with our customers here at BCM1 is staff training. And are the users going to adopt the service if you migrate? Device management, licensing costs, and the costs that you're going to incur when you roll out this type of a service, especially a Microsoft Teams. Is there any feature loss? And if there is feature loss, do you need to have us build a solution around that, such as using our UCAAS One service to augment some of that? So these are some of the things that we would go through with someone before they make the jump. The challenge in the marketplace we find is that this can be overwhelming. And where do you start? A lot of the stuff is being recently published. And we find there's a number of companies and providers that see the great market opportunity to win your business, but don't necessarily have the depth to execute it. And you find yourself in a situation where it sounds good on paper, but to actually deliver it just isn't there. And that scares people, and it should. And the worst thing I find happen is the path to nowhere, and that's making no decision. And I can't blame folks for doing so. In that, the fear here are folks are renewing existing legacy services that do not translate. And especially if their organization is trapped into those services for another 3+ years. And so this is where the conversation of avoiding path dependency and finding solutions that can meet the requirement list on the left, again, while reducing your organizational risk. And that's what we want to talk about here. So let's talk about avoiding path dependence. Again, path dependence to me is picking and choosing a vehicle that cannot be used in a few years or something I'm going to highly regret. I always say design your kitchen before you lay your foundation of your house. Let's make sure that the foundation that we're putting together here can be built upon. And so that leads us into some of the vehicles that you can use immediately. under our BCM1 portfolio. With the BCM portfolio, you have extensive SIP trunking resources from small market to enterprise. A variety of solutions you can use at your disposal that translate right into platforms like Microsoft Teams, if that's the direction you want to go. But if you're undecided, in my opinion, the worst thing is doing nothing and staying with legacy type services. Moving to a modern day SIP trunking service from BCM1 gives you the flexibility and reduces your risk to eventually move to platforms like Teams. If you find that the Teams phone system is not ready for you, or you really want to get rid of any legacy PBX systems that you have and you want to do it quickly, one of the paths that you may follow is moving into the BCM1 UCAAS 1 service. This will allow you to have the virtualized systems with a real-time replication and uptime that you need, that you don't have to manage yourself, with all the call flows and hunt groups and call center functionality that you're going to need to run your business. And if you want to incorporate a Microsoft Teams or incorporate third-party software applications, you can easily do so with this platform. So a lot of times in our conversations with our customers is that, are you ready to make a jump to one of the UCC platforms? If you're not, let's look at what you can do today to hopefully save your organization money, improve efficiency, scale, while setting yourself up for the future. So I just want to touch base on a couple of these technologies and keep you on time today. So from a SIP trunking perspective, you have a very deep portfolio. One of the first things that always is important is to verify that we can interop with the platform that you have today or are considering. And that's why we invest heavily in interop testing with modern platforms like Microsoft Teams. We're Avaya DevConnect certified, Mitel certified, countless engagements with various different platforms, documentation that's available to make sure that if you're deploying our SIP trunking service with a platform you have, and that's how you're going to start, let's make sure it works cleanly and all your features work and it's supported effectively. So the interoperability piece is big. The data center and redundancy and the active-active failover are critical. 911 management for Carey's Law and supporting all of your remote workers to meet the Carey's Law and Ray-Baum standards, you can easily do with our services and portals. And we have some advanced tools that can allow you to make changes and move this anytime you want to. And of course, disaster recovery. If you're going to use SIP trunking, that usually means you have on-premise equipment or a virtual system. If you lost it, let's keep all your calls up in real time and fail them over to other destinations. And then one other thing you're going to see here in some of the use case pieces is the ability to share trunk resources with not only existing PBX systems you have, but with also other ones that you may have acquired or with UCC platforms. So an extensive portfolio of SIP trunking services here under the BCM umbrella for you. Another piece that you could say that comes from this heritage is the ability to take your system that may be connected to a PRI today, unhook that PRI, that legacy services that may not be able to support you for remote 911 services for your work from home users, may not scale well, may not share well, may not have any service visibility, and may not have any disaster recovery capabilities into it. Move it into a modern day SIP trunking service, but still allow that phone system to think it's connected to a PRI. And we do that through our SBC gateways that we provide our customers. So this is a way that you could patch what you have, but allow yourself to be future-proof. And so this is a very common application. This scenario here is the SBC is provided with a PRI handoff using your existing internet connections in many cases. From a UCAAS perspective, you're going to see that under the covers is Cisco BroadSoft. So you have a very highly developed, highly accepted core that is also running active, geographically dispersed data centers surrounded with an outstanding pre-sales and post-sales tech team. So when you're moving to a BCM1 UCAAS 1 service, I think not only to identify what what attributes you need and how does it match, but how is it going to be executed? And I think what really is exciting for me, spending so much of my career on the SIP trunking side, is to see how we do the consultation of the dial plan and execution of the actual rollouts of our UCAAS One services. So this service is also a good place to start. And then if you want to incorporate in platforms like Microsoft Teams, you can, or again, other third-party software vehicles. But this gives you a modern day communication and collaboration platform for your business right here at BCM One under our UCAAS services. So a good place to start if you're going to come and migrate away from a PBX system. In terms of Microsoft Teams, you've got a number of options here and how to connect to it. If you want to jump into Teams, you're going to be greeted with a pre-sales call that we can assist you with in understanding your environment, the workflows, and then we make a recommendation on how to get there. Technically, you can source your own SBCs that are required by Microsoft, or we can provide them ourselves here at BCM One with our voice-enabled team solution. I'll show you just in a minute. If anyone on this call is working through the Department of Defense, you'll be very pleased to know that we have our GCC High. We have experience with GCC High and can easily migrate you for your compliance there to allow you to use Teams for your conferencing and traditional calling. So again, extensive experience for commercial use as well as the government and Department of Defense here through our BCM One portfolio. For those that are going to ask for assistance and have things turnkey for them, they're going to come to us for our voice-enabled Teams hosted SBCs. And this diagram may be a bit busy for you if you're not from this world, but what you see here is what we're providing is your dial tone, your ability to make and receive phone calls with your existing phone numbers with local 911 services. To the Microsoft phone system. So when you're in the Teams client, you pick up the phone and instead of being stuck for just internal use, you can make your outside calls and keep your phone numbers. And so instead of having to do your own PowerShell or having to source these SBCs, we put it together in a nice, easy kit for you. And we host it all in a high availability arrangement. So getting to Teams is very easy with us if this is your path that you would like to take. The good news is you can take a variety of paths and you're not limited. And because of the underlying technology built here and because we own, operate, and develop much of what we have, it's easily done to move from service to service as your business changes. We do see a lot of folks starting with SIP trunking services and sometimes SIP trunking with PRI handoff, but have in mind that they want to migrate to UCAAS quickly or migrate to something like Microsoft Teams. So very flexible services and a lot of different options for you. I thought that might help to color this in is to take you through a couple use cases. So here goes. The first one that I think is important is that if you do have PBX infrastructure today, and you have folks that work from home, setting them up with local 911 for your state's carriers law compliance and Ray-Baum Act compliance is real easy to do with our SIP trunking services. So whether you have a single phone system or multiple, using our SIP trunks, you can register all of your home users with local 911 services. And most importantly, when they dial 911, the call will go to the local PSAP and they'll know who they are. And this can be very granular, whether it's different zones of buildings or whether it's classrooms. So very granular 911 services provided right through the SIP trunking service, and this is easily turned on and executed. Another thing that we have is customers that have multiple phone systems that they've made big investment into. They want to maintain these systems at least for the immediate service, for the immediate future. They want the flexibility to eventually make a change. One of the things that our customers do is they utilize our trunk sharing capabilities to allow you to share the SIP trunk resources with multiple phone systems, and they could be different platforms. So this trunk sharing capability is very important for cost savings and for scalability. So again, can you imagine, instead of having to buy a given amount of legacy SIP trunks for each and every phone system location, you could use a consolidated pool for those locations and provide local 911, disaster recovery, et cetera, through the modern day SIP service here at BCM1. Another element that you may see is a hybrid. If you have phone system equipment, you may find yourself where you have some on-premise and some virtual systems, and these are becoming more and more popular. We find that the modern day phone system has a lot of these collaboration functions built into them now, and they're moving in that direction, plus all the advanced calling capabilities your organization may need, and you may find a need to deploy on-premise and virtual. You will find that the legacy services do not translate well to virtual systems at all, in my opinion. Not only do they not necessarily are built for virtual systems, they struggle with things like scaling, they struggle with things like sharing resources and 911 zoning. So if you find yourself considering a virtual hybrid scenario, we would highly encourage you to have a chat with us about our SIP trunking capability here at BCM1. Moving to Teams, really easy to do. You can take your numbers from our SIP trunking service or UCAAS service, and we can point it to Teams if that's your choice. To get to Teams, you can source your own equipment. We do certify with a variety of the SBCs that are out there that Microsoft requires, or you can turnkey it and use our voice-enabled Teams services that allow you to instantly get started and make and receive phone calls right through Teams, instead of having to buy the costly calling plans and have Microsoft be your phone company. And then another component, of course, is that you identify that your organization needs some of your advanced call features, hunt groups, call queues that you currently have on your phone system, but you want to get a lot of the general users to something like Teams. You can hybrid the services, have one trunk pool that both Microsoft Teams phone system can share with your Mitel or Cisco or Avaya simultaneously, with local 911 services, powering both services together, even allowing yourself to call back and forth at no cost. So these are some things that you may be facing. And again, the technology we have here allows you to do all these things. And then of course, the UCAAS service, to be able to start with SIP trunking service and then eventually get to UCAAS or roll it out in phases. We do that all day long. The ability to execute on what we've just shown here is extremely high. So our hope is for today's presentation, which I think we're pretty much on time, Bob, 30 minutes, hopefully give you a flavor of what we're seeing in the marketplace. What we're seeing is some of the trends, some of the ways that if you're undecided on how to move forward, how you can get engaged with us and have a conversation on the right path. And I think very importantly, understanding the need that making no decision is a decision, especially if it's renewing legacy services. We've just moved on from that. So that being said, Bob, how about I take a break here, a breather, and see if you have anything for me. Anyone want to chat?
Well, Mike, it's not going to be that much of a breather because I have 3 questions for you.
Oh, okay, good.
There you go. The first question is, with regards to Microsoft Teams, what's the advantage of us purchasing it through BCM1?
I would have to think that question really stems from buying Microsoft Teams, especially the calling plan services, versus, direct versus coming to BCM1. First of all, BCM1 is a Microsoft Gold partner. And so not only do you have all that, the resources here at your fingertips, you also have the ability to just do some of the things you just seen here. Utilize the technology, especially calling plan technology. Instead of being threaded into a Microsoft plan, you have the ability to share it with other resources, migrate over time. Things that have been problematic in the industry, like caller ID name. That's why you wouldn't necessarily use a Microsoft as your phone company. And I think you'll find Microsoft doesn't want to be a phone company. They encourage direct routing partners like us to do it. But when you have this level of expertise on the SIP trunking side, on the Microsoft side, and you're going to get it at the same or much likely a lower price, I find that it's really an easy conversation to have. Plus the responsiveness and the depth of know-how you have here. I think it's an easy choice to talk with as a BCM1.
Great. Along those same lines, what is needed to set up your SIP with Microsoft Teams?
So I think the first thing that has to be addressed is that if you're going to go SIP trunking with Teams, and again, that term is direct routing, my strong advice is identify the users that will go on to the service. And so are you going to put everyone on it and do a hot cut? I don't necessarily recommend that unless you're a very small organization. You do have to have the Microsoft phone system licenses, and we can provide those for you here. Or you can source them yourself. But there is a certain class license that you have to have. For example, the E5 series includes the phone system module in it. You can also have an E3 and buy the phone system module separately. So there's a couple ways to go about it, but the licensing is key. From a direct routing perspective, and again, direct routing is having us provide the SIP trunking services and porting your numbers in and helping that management of it versus having Microsoft do it. You'd need the SIP trunks to go with it. And then Microsoft is going to require a session border controller. Usually these are virtual session border controllers. Some organizations do provide them themselves, which we fully support. Or you come to us for our voice-enabled Teams solution. So really in a nutshell, Bob, you got to have your licenses. You have a BCM1 SIP trunking calling plan, and you have voice-enabled Teams most likely. And this can be set up and running really quickly. And the sync tools are easy. You don't have to do PowerShell. You don't have to do any of that type of stuff. I think we've made it real easy for you. So hopefully that helps answer that question for the guest.
I believe it does. We have one final question, unless somebody pops up with another one in the next few minutes. And that would be, and I believe you had a slide that talked to this briefly, can you support local E911 with Teams?
Yeah, that's a great question. We talked about it, just touched on it. Inside the Teams phone system module, you will find that there is a 911 panel for each user. In that panel, it'll ask you for an ELIN number, and that emergency line number is usually your phone number in most cases. In the event you have a bunch of users at a certain given location, you may end up using the same ELIN for many of them. And so they can be different than what you project as traditional caller ID. What some folks ask us for is that they want to have users moving around constantly. They want to take their laptop to a Starbucks and plug in. Under the BCM1 SIP trunking services, when you have an ELIN number from us for that user, it really is designed for a fixed user. And so that's usually someone that's working from home using the Teams phone system. We know where they are. When they're moving around, it is not a dynamic tracking system. So you do have to be aware of that. There is no dynamic tracking for 911, but for your users that are working from home, working from an office, you can set it up with fixed locations, and when they call 911, it'll go to the local PSAP and they'll be in compliance. Hopefully that helps, Bob.
It does. Mike, if you don't have any further closing remarks, just like to thank you at this point for your time, your thought leadership, and the incredible presentation that you were able to provide us this afternoon.
Thank you for having me, everyone, and I hope we can talk soon. Thank you.
Take care.
Hey, Bob,
Yes.
there is actually a question.
Just came in.
Someone just popped up. Yep.
It did. Mike, as a partner, we must have the product knowledge and how to get trained in all those products. Would you like to answer that?
I guess how to transfer this knowledge to one of our BCM partners. Is that,
yes,
is
I
that
guess
what
it's
you're...
all about adoption.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I think what happens is as a BCM partner, if you're working with Andy or one of our regional channel account managers, they're going to escalate into the right resource if they don't have the depth themselves. So I think you're going to see a series of these trainings that will be available to our business partners. We enjoy it. I know I'm thrilled to do these as long as folks are willing to have me. But we really believe in training, providing education on here so folks can make effective decisions and help guide their customers. And I think we have so much know-how here. So I would start with your regional channel account manager. And if they don't have, the know-how themselves, they'll engage folks like us to help your organization. We do a lot of individual business partner trainings, attend a lot of sales meetings. Really enjoy doing it. So, and I like to volunteer for as many of those as I can. So I'd start there.
Okay, great. Do we have any other questions? That looks about it, Mike. So again, thank you. Just to reiterate, this call has been recorded and it will be available in a few days on the BCM1 website. We will let you know.
Thanks, everyone.
Oh, wait, we have one more just popped up.
Okay. All right.
This is great. This is awesome and a great question. Can BCM1 help with sales collateral?
Well, Paul, if you're still on the call,
Yep,
I think
I'm still
it's in your wheelhouse, probably.
It sure
Yep.
is.
Yep, Jean, this is Paula from marketing and BCM1. And yes, we co-brand sales collateral for our channel partners. So we'll be in touch shortly after call. I have your name down and I'll have your channel rep contact you.
Any other questions? Well, folks, that looks like that wraps it up. Again, thank you for joining the call this afternoon. And we hope you have a pleasant rest of the day and certainly week. Stay safe.